Hello, and welcome to Full Volume, where we give you the behind the scenes of marketing with tips and ideas so that you can amplify your business. I've got two of my favorite experts with me today, Monica and Natalie. Monica oversees all of our social media strategy here at Volume 9, and Natalie is our intrepid CEO. We're going to be digging into specifically social media strategy and execution for home services businesses. They often don't have a full-fledged marketing team. They often have an admin that's wearing lots of hats. So we're going to talk about how they can use social media to bring more people in. How are you guys doing?
I am very excited.
I'm alive, alert, and enthusiastic.
You want to sing a song about it?
I think I'll lose if I do that, so I'll hold off for now. But...
Okay, stick to the end and we'll have Monica sing you out. All right, well, let's dive right in. Let's get to the good stuff. So we're talking 4 and 2 home service companies: roofers, plumbers, landscapers, repair, AC, all of these people who do really hard work and often are running around in their vans having to do a lot of visits. So trying to squeeze in social media can be challenging. So when you're thinking about our home service homies, what's the biggest mistake you see them making, like right out of the gate when they're like, I know I need to show up on social media. I'm just going to get started. What are some common trip hazards?
Biggest mistake that I think I see home services companies make is that it actually works the opposite way of what you would think. So the majority of the time, they want to put promotional content first, talk about us, our promotions, our discounts, our services. That's actually the content that you should post about the least, because before you talk about services and solutions, you actually have to make sure that you're building resonance and connection with your audience before they even recognize that they have the need.
I think the biggest... Oh, go ahead. I think the biggest mistake I also see home services companies make is they want to do too much at the get-go. Your inclination is like, oh, let's do social media. So you set up an Instagram and a Facebook, and your cousin knows TikTok, so let's set one of those up. And someone said we need a LinkedIn. So all of a sudden you've got 5 social media profiles that you're trying to keep managed. They're all different. And so it becomes really, really difficult to manage them. So instead of focusing on 1 or 2 that make the most sense, they bite off more than they can chew, and then it just sort of dies on the vine.
Absolutely. We definitely like to always tell everyone that we work with, do what you can do and do it well. Meet your audience where they are and do that well. Do not spread yourself too thin, because you're going to lose the message and you might not even be putting your resources towards the place where your audience actually is.
So what does a realistic, sustainable social media approach look like for someone who's trying to run their own home services business?
So, of course, it's always going to depend on your resources and your bandwidth, but the most sustainable thing that we could give as advice to home services companies is to start with the questions and the information that your audience is actually asking and making sure that you're meeting them on the platforms that they are. So how would that look like in reality? We'll definitely start with Facebook. Do not neglect Facebook, because we know that it's a super hot spot for homeowners. So you want to meet them where they are by picking the right platform. And then you just want to value consistency over complicating it. So if you only have the bandwidth to post 1 time a week, do that, but post every single week. And then you get to a sweet spot eventually of 3 to 5 times a week. You can scale up video from there. But I'd say the simplest way that I can start is the audience and the platform where you know that your audience is. So Facebook, and then starting with consistency and answering those questions that you know your audience is already asking.
Gosh, I love everything Monica just said. So ditto. But, I would also say that if you're in a situation where maybe your home services business has different reps going out to different locations. So maybe you're in a window install company, or you're a plumber and you've got several plumbers, or a garage door installation. One of the most impactful things that your team can be doing is capturing before and afters. And that's not just for your social media. That can also be for your general marketing. Pictures worth 1,000 words, and that really does the trick in home services. And then in addition, I totally agree with Monica. One of the best things you can be doing is just pull out your camera, answer questions on video, because it's easy for you. You're an expert. It's the low barrier to doing that. And in home services, what you're really selling is trust. Somebody's got to trust that you're not going to mess up their plumbing. They got to trust that you're going to send a stranger into their home. And things like answering and introducing yourself via video can be really helpful in kind of getting over that hurdle.
Yeah. And to add to what Natalie was saying, video is really super impactful. So again, if we could wave a magic wand and do this exactly the way that we would recommend, videos. Take those videos of your expertise, have your technicians take videos of the job sites that you can later tell the story of how you solved that homeowner's problem. I think a lot of people get into their heads thinking that it has to be perfectly polished, but it actually doesn't. It's a matter of taking out your camera, taking photos and videos of things that you're already doing, and just making sure that you tell the story of how you alleviated the homeowner's stress and solved their problems. And that goes right along with what Natalie was mentioning about before and afters, testimonials. Hey, I got this question today. I get this question from homeowners all the time. And here's what I wish they would know before they waste their money doing XYZ, those sort of things.
So what's going to separate quality before and after content, quality video content? I know that recording can often feel really intimidating, especially if you're asking team members that are out in the field to do it. So what would be some tips to be able to encourage people to take the before and afters, to get videos of job sites? How would you advise them on what makes a good video for social?
So what I would recommend that makes a video more impactful for social than just showing a transformation or just showing a before and after is, again, tying it to that story element, telling the story and making sure you can build that resonance with your audience. So you may have the photos or the videos of the roofing transformation or the issues that you were seeing with the HVAC and then what you did to troubleshoot. But if you hit on what went wrong? What were the warning signs? Why did it happen? What did you do to solve the problem? Or maybe even what did the homeowner miss? And just take those pieces of it and tie it in to tell a cohesive story. It's going to resonate a lot more, not only to build trust and proof about how you've helped people solve their problems, but to get you in front of people who may not even know that they have a problem yet. Or maybe they're in that intent phase where they think maybe I'm going to have to replace this soon, and they see you tell that story in a cohesive way that gets in front of them.
Well, okay, so can we dig into that a little bit more? So people who are going to be hiring, they don't know that they need you till they need you, right? Till there is an active leak, till something isn't working and they have a problem today. And now they start seeking out solutions. So how does that change what kind of content we should have on our social media feeds? Or does it? So what does that look like, knowing that once someone is in the decision-making phase, they're probably trying to move quickly?
So there's a great example. We worked with a garage door installation company, and some of our most successful content for them was the very raw things that people would input into Google as they were trying to figure out how to fix their garage. So it wasn't like how to replace a spring on my garage door. It was garage door making squeaky sound when it's cold out. And so really connecting with that. And then, like to Monica's point, just telling the story. Here's what you do. Here's what to be worried about. Here's what you're looking for. And as much as possible, like giving a visual. I mean, even on some of that content, it was simply blogs where it was, very raw, what a person's usually asking, and then a helpful answer. And that was a really helpful strategy with them. And then getting a photo or video is really nice icing on top. But even that informational content can be really effective in your content strategy.
I think that's a really great question. And to add to Natalie's point, I really like to think about the audience in different segments. So even if you know that your primary audience is homeowners, you can almost break them out in your head into subsets of these people that have lower intent, these people that know they are eventually going to need to do this, but probably need a few touch points, and the people, to your point, Lauren, that are like, this is an emergency situation. I need this now. And the way that I might break that up is thinking people with super low intent, they don't necessarily know that they have a problem yet, but they're homeowners. They know that they're eventually going to run into something. So the kind of things that are going to resonate with them might just be brands that are really memorable, brands that are telling stories about their team or have a strong company culture, because they're like, oh, they're really cool. Maybe next time I want to work with them on something. They're involved with the community, because a lot of this is local marketing as well. And that might be that lower intent audience, and that kind of stuff that it's not necessarily that they have the need now, but next time they run into it, they might come top of mind just because of something that they saw. And then when you get to the kind of mid-intent where they're thinking, we're planning to remodel our house, or we've got this tree in the backyard that we know is eventually going to be a problem, or something like that. That's where you can start pushing out to hit that audience more of that education and planning for your next project, costs and repairs and transparency on things like that. And then, of course, you've got your high intent, your before and after is your emergency response. Hey, you can call us at any time and we'll be there. So I like to try to think about it in different subsets of your same audience, depending on where they are in their decision-making journey.
I know that a challenge often when you are running your own social media and you are an expert at what you do, that what you do becomes boring to you, right? Because it's what you're doing every single day. So often asking team members to take photos, tell stories about the jobs that they're doing can be challenging because they think it's going to be boring and that no one's going to be interested. So how can we help ourselves and our team members who are out in the field doing these jobs? How can we help them see content angles? Or do we need to worry about that education piece? Like, how do we help get things from the active job sites to social without there being the filter of, no one's going to care about this?
It's a great question of like, how do I get my team creating content without like creating barriers in their head? Like, no one's going to like this, or this isn't good, or my photos are bad, or I don't like social, or all that head noise that can happen that sort of prevents people who maybe aren't that excited about social media from creating content for you. Honestly, in the home services field, the best thing I would say is to just get them to start. Don't overthink what video we're taking or how good was my before and after. Encourage them to capture stuff that's funny. You know, oh my gosh, somebody got a breakfast burrito and it was way too spicy and it was hilarious. You know, just encouraging them to just try and capture everything, because I think one of the beautiful things about social is you can publish things and let your audience tell you what they are resonating with, but you will find that the things that you find interesting or charming or kind of neat behind the scenes, they probably will too. And sometimes you just don't know until you try. So my thought would be just try to get people doing something, try to get some of it published, try to let your audience tell you, and try not to overthink or over curate how you want your team creating content so that it doesn't create these barriers. And maybe do some things to sort of positively encourage them. You know, maybe incentives just for how much content you're capturing, whether it gets used on social media or not, so that it's like, well, here, I just took 200 photos for you, use what you want. You know, sometimes it's just better to have that kind of content flowing.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And I think another thing that might be helpful when the team is very much like, nobody cares, nobody wants to listen to me, try to encourage them to reframe it as it's less about talking about us and ourselves and selling ourselves and more about talking directly to those homeowners, because they can leverage the expertise that they already have, calls that they get all the time, things that they see on job sites all the time. And they're like, if I could just shake every homeowner and tell them this thing that I know because I'm an expert in my field, have them reframe the content angle from that lens of, you know, here's something that I see a lot of people on job sites I go, just they do not understand this about their HVAC. They always make this same mistake that I see over and over, and just encourage them to think about it less as selling myself and how interesting I am, and more again about what is the problem that I can help you solve because I've seen it so many times.
So how do you walk the line then? Because I think people who sell their expertise, right? Like if my job is knowing how to solve your problem, my job is fixing your AC, sometimes putting out educational content can feel scary because you're like, well, why would I teach them how to do the thing that I am trying to get them to hire me to do? So where's the line between posting educational content versus like teaching someone how to do that? And like how, as a service provider, can you find a good balance of showing how you fix something without feeling like you're giving it all away?
From my perspective, as a home service provider, you don't really need to educate your customer on how you're doing something. Like if you are a plumber, it's going to be rough to create a video where you're taking a step-by-step through an entire, you know, I'm about to say plumbing words that I don't know, gasket you're replacing or, you know, pipes you're sweating. But I think where it can be really, really valuable is showing other homeowners things to be looking at to know when something's broken. Like, hey, look at this. This is what a broken gasket looks like. Or, hey, see how these pipes are shaking? If your pipes are doing this, this is probably what's happening and this is bad. Or like on a garage door, like this is what a rusted spring might look like. And really kind of showing your customers things that they should be paying attention to. Maybe if you're a window installer, showing condensation on windows and being like, gosh, if you're seeing this kind of condensation on your windows, this is a challenge. And really helping us visually see problems that we might not even know how to diagnose, and going like, oh my gosh, do my windows have that? I should go double check. And then if you're feeling real frisky, I think a customer would love to watch like a whole window being taken out and a new one being put in. I think it'd be very entertaining to watch, but I don't think you have to create that kind of content early on. That kind kind of content can be super cool as you kind of get your feet wet and start to get more and more excited about social media, but you don't have to start with stuff that's that aggressive.
I totally agree. And I think even thinking about as a firsthand customer, every time that I work with anyone in the home services industry, it's very much a positive experience when it feels like a collaboration, because I, as the home renter or owner, was able to say to them, hey, I noticed that this was happening. And so they're listening to the information that I'm giving. They're educating me on what to look for next, to Natalie's point. And it's very much that idea of like, we don't need to empower them to execute against it themselves, but just to know what decisions to make based on what they're seeing and understanding, hey, here's what might factor into it costing a lot more versus it costing this much. Or here's when you might know whether a repair is warranted versus a replacement. And to Natalie's point, those warning signs that just, I think it empowers your audience enough to know that they can make an informed decision and build confidence in calling you. But it's definitely very different from full on DIY. Here is the first thing to pick up and to do. So just building that education, not necessarily against the execution, but against all the decision making that surrounds that happening.
You both have mentioned trust and building trust and like how we can use social media to start working on that relationship. One of the things we haven't talked about yet is sharing like reviews or testimonials. How can we integrate that into a well-balanced content plan without it feeling cheesy or bragging and boring?
I think that third-party reviews are the most important thing that a home service company can focus on and work on. It will help your social media. It will help your visibility in Google. It will help you visibility in AI search tools. If you can only do one thing to start, focusing on getting reviews and empowering your happiest customers to help you co-market, I think it'd be the most important thing that you do. Here's some things that I would think about and try to do. The one, most home service companies already plan this in their pricing. They'll say things like, oh, if you let us put a sign out front afterwards, we'll give you $500 off. It's already part of the deal. I would just lean in on that and go, if you agree to write a review, only if you're happy. If you agree to let us post about this on social media. And also, one of the things I know home services companies do a lot that's really helpful is ask them to publish a positive review inside the groups that they're in. So there's a lot of things like a Facebook group for just my neighborhood, and the home service provider can't even get into that group, but I'm in there. So me giving them an endorsement inside that group can make a big difference. So I think, getting them to leave you a Google business review link, Yelp, kind of all the major ones that are in your industry, and then utilizing that in different spots in your marketing can be really impactful.
Absolutely. And I think with the trust building through even social specifically, a lot of times, like we talked about before, there tends to be an inclination to put forth a lot of promotional content, a lot of here are our discounts, here are our services. It's sort of like a banner approach, right? Because that's what feels natural. But as we know, because of the way that people use social to build trust now, to have that brand awareness, to have it be one of their many touch points before they ultimately make a decision, we know that human faces, the owner sharing their experience or their company culture, or even just a tech on a job site that's like, hey, I ran into another really common thing that I see a lot. That's always going to outperform every other thing, even if it's a generic, happy summer post or happy Labor Day, or if it's a, something that's just like, hey, we've got this deal. People really want to work with people. And especially because this is such a sensitive environment, you're inviting them to your home to work on your house. It's something that's very meaningful to you. So you have to know that you're working with people and with companies that care, that obviously have the expertise. And that comes from showing up consistently, not only through your reviews, to Natalie's point, but through your social content, showing you in the real world, doing real jobs, giving honest explanations, making people build that trust with you.
So what's a way that a local home service can take advantage of being local? Natalie mentioned, Facebook groups that are specific to neighborhoods. We're talking about building trust. So what's maybe an overlooked opportunity for a company that's local to a specific service area that maybe like a national brand wouldn't be able to take advantage of?
That's a great question. I think, number one, as Natalie mentioned, Facebook groups, I think are going to be super important. I think there's also a huge opportunity in terms of community involvement and local events, and getting not only posting about your presence at these events, but just finding partnerships and events that make sense and are relevant to make sure that your company is participating in. Because again, when you think about your customers that are on this lower intent place in their decision-making process. They aren't necessarily ready. They don't need a plumber today or tomorrow, but they know that they eventually will be. And I met, this amazing guy at this event, and I stopped by his booth and I chatted with him, and I really want to hire him next time. So I think along with the Facebook groups, thinking about community involvement, and really those are the things that set you apart from somebody who is just sort of a faceless national brand or something where you don't actually see the people first. I think another thing that there's probably an opportunity around content for is in not just seasonality, but local things that are happening. Let's say that you're in a specific neighborhood and there was a big, hailstorm or something that happened, posting content that is more time sensitive like that to show that you're tuned in, you're plugged into the area, you recognize the need and how that impacts people in the neighborhood, and making sure that you have a process for monitoring that kind of stuff and putting that out to the community as it pops up.
Can we get more specific with that too? Like, I'd love to talk through like a use case, because I know that I've gotten text messages after a severe storm rolls through, feel very spammy of like, lots of neighbors had experienced roof damage. Do you need a roof inspection after that most recent storm? So if, let's say, a big storm blows through, we know that this one neighborhood got hit hard by hail, by rain. How can a company use that on social and in their marketing in a way that feels community-centric versus leaning like too heavy promotional, right? Like, how do we keep it feeling helpful versus salesy?
So I love that. I love that question of like, gosh, let's not be overly promotional. Like, how do we get into people's inboxes and have them thinking about this? Like right off the bat, I think one of the most interesting things that would be interesting is to just talk about the recent hailstorm, show some debris damage, and then talk about how, you might be a little promotional, like, hey, we're happy to come take a look at your roof for you. And then you can boost it right around the area that was affected by the hailstorm. So you can be like, hey, I want to pay a little money to get in front of homeowners in this footprint.
Thinking about finding organic posts with some budget behind them to focus in on a target.
Yep. I think like that to me would be a really natural way to get in front of somebody without having to send a sales rep to knock on their door. Not that there's anything wrong with sending sales reps to knock on your door, but as we all know, like that can be expensive to hire that person, and it's going to have mixed success because it's going to feel a little spammy.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be anti-promotional or sales because we are businesses. But to Monica's point from earlier, oftentimes that's like the easiest first step. So a lot of people will jump in with, we're doing free roof inspections, or we're going to throw in this additional service if you hire us for this right now. And so it can be noisy if everybody's jumping on the same incident. Sure. So like, how do you jump in and add impactful content, right? We want to bring in clients, but
right. And I think it's a great question. I think honestly, if there's a big hailstorm in the area or a big storm, you are looking at that segment of the audience that is already high intent. They have the need already, so it's okay to push out, hey, here's how we can help. Hey, here's our emergency services. You are right in that area where that message would be accurate. I mean, obviously, making sure that it's true to your brand tone and true to, your company, and not like weird and like, oh, discount for whoever's, house like endured this damage, but just being very, defaulting to being genuine to your brand and how you help people, because even that sense of promotional content is still thinking about the consumer first and saying, hey, we're paying attention to the weather. We know people need help. We know you might be overwhelmed right now with all the stuff that's happening. So we're just putting ourselves in front of you and you can take the next step. And I think another important part of that is social media is only one piece of the puzzle. So, where, as Natalie mentioned, boosting to new audiences around the area might help you a lot with getting in front of new eyes. But we'd also recommend you do that in tandem with other marketing channels, like your email newsletter. If you already have a customer list, then send an email out to your customer list and say, hey guys, we know that this happened. We're offering this for you. So your messaging is going to be a little bit different based on if you're talking to your existing customer base, potential new ones. But that's kind of where you can fine tune that, okay, how promotional do we get with this versus versus is this more of a retargeting effort, and just kind of go from there.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about this, I just think the best brands are the ones that can add a little creativity to the mix. So we know that on average, consumers are going to have at least one person get up on their roof after a hailstorm, and they're probably going to max out at 3. And if they really trust the first person up on a ladder, you're not going to ask for the other 2. So when you're in one of these like kind of more reactionary, garage door's broken, plumbing's busted, I need someone to look at a roof. When you're in that high intent emergency situation, I think speed is of the essence, which is why so many people default to getting people knocking on doors. And I think if you can just add something memorable and a little extra or special, like if it were me, if I was a roofing company, I'd give out free cupcakes or something like that to people who let me look at their roof. Something that's like, well, at a minimum, we're going to get free cupcakes from these guys. So we want them to be one of the 3 because we want our cupcakes. And you really just, how do we get into that stack of 3? And so I think really the concept would be, what's the promotion? What's the goal? And then what channels, including social media, can we use to get our high intent message out there as quickly as possible? Because there's a time limit. Everybody's going to have someone on the roof in the next week. So we have 1 week to get as many roof appointments as we possibly can. How do we do that?
So one of the ways that I know that a lot of people are saving time and trying to move fast is taking advantage of new AI tools for planning content, creating imagery. But there's a lot of consumer fatigue already on seeing super AI generated content. So for these businesses who are trying to move fast, be smart about their resources, how do they use those kinds of tools to create something quickly without losing like their humanity and their credibility by looking too fake?
So that's a great question.
Hey, Lauren, that's a giant question.
That's a great question. And I think, using AI where you can use it to create efficiencies, that's going to be the case across a lot of different things, but certainly for your social content. So if you kind of back up and start by thinking about your social strategy as a home services company in a few different buckets. So thinking, okay, we've got our resonance with our audience content, or let's call it problem recognition content, where we know that there's a problem that we can help you solve. We also have our educational content that goes along with that, where we explain to you maintenance that you should be looking for, warning signs that you should be looking for, costs. And then that kind of filters down into content that builds proof, our reviews, our testimonials, our actual, job sites and stories. Then we filter down into our community-based content, what we're doing in the area, our localized content, our team, our culture, and then that smallest bit, remember, that's the promotions and the sales and the discounts and all of that. I think first you establish your buckets or your pillars of content, right? And then you look through each pillar and you think, which one of these can AI help me to create efficiencies with versus what has to be human? Because we know that there is an advantage to both, but that the human advantage of having real footage of you on job sites, your actual technicians that work for you, that people can look forward to those people coming to their homes, especially in super local content, real befores and afters and transformations in those stories. You just can't replace that. So you have to really use the advantage of humans, human faces, smiling faces, that personality in that way. But perhaps you can use, AI generated to speed up certain things, like getting word out about specific promotions or deals or discounts, or putting together different carousels, which would just be the multiple slides or static graphics of things that are just common education points. Because another thing in social that's really important to us is, though we know that video is very, very important, we want to always test different mediums. So we want to still test static graphics. We want to still test carousel posts. We want to still try other things just to see what the audience is responding to best. And I think that's probably the best place for using AI to use those or to create those efficiencies.
I think one of the mistakes that I see a lot of home services make, and it's an unintentional one. You're really busy, you have a lot going on, you have limited resources. You go into Gemini or ChatGPT and ask it to make you a social media post, it makes something and it looks good enough. It talks about plumbing or roofing or your topic. Wow, you post it, you've checked the box on social media. And then you realize it doesn't get any engagement, nobody likes it, and it's not really doing the thing that you want it to do. And actually, insidiously, it's actually hurting your social media because when you post low engagement content, it pulls your whole visibility for your account down. And so a lot of business owners think that they are, woo, checkbox, this is a lot easier because I just went to Gemini and had it create social media for you. So I would say that like the devil's really in the details here. But if it were me, what I would do is focus on keeping creativity and authenticity as much as possible, then use AI to help extend your voice. Hey, I created a video and now I want help with video editing. Now I want to turn that into a blog post. Now I want to turn that into a social media post. And like start with something that's unique and human and then use AI to help you extend it and promote it. But try to avoid just going straight to AI to do it for you, because unless you are really, really good at like what you're prompting or you really got a clarity on what your audience needs, a lot of times what an AI tool will create for you seems like it passes must for social media. It's an image that's social media sized. It looks like plumbing. It's maybe your brand colors. There's some sort of copy that sounds like Facebook copy. So you post it all on there and you think, but you'll find that it kind of falls flat. And then there's just no reason, like if you're going to do Facebook, but not do Facebook well, I would argue there's probably stronger reasons to just not do Facebook. Doing Facebook poorly is worse than not doing Facebook at all, in my opinion, because it looks inauthentic and it costs you time, money, and effort, and it's not bringing any value to you.
All right, I've got two more questions I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on. Okay, so I'm going to start with the more negative one, and then we'll end on the positive one. So I'm running my roofing company. I know I'm supposed to be on social media. I've been putting out content consistently. I just don't feel it's working. What would be your advice to me when I feel like I've been putting in the effort and it's not doing anything for the business?
Great question. So I think the first thing to do is to make sure that we are aligned and we understand what you mean when you say it's not working. So does that mean that you don't feel that you're generating enough calls or leads? Does that mean that you feel that your posts themselves aren't getting engagement or you're not growing your following? I think step number one is to figure out when you say it's not working, what does that mean to you and how does it need to look? Because again, social is one piece of the mix. So there may be other marketing channels that we can tap as part of this puzzle to make sure that your full funnel marketing efforts are all working together and ultimately getting you the results that you want. But assuming that we get to the same page on that, and what a good strategy would be to make sure that we know that we're efforting against the results in the right way. We then look at your content strategy together and just figure out, what kind of posts are you making? Is it resonating with your audience? Knowing who your audience is this something that they would be even engaged with? Something that Natalie brought up before, just, putting what's in the brand colors, it's there, it's proof of life, it's up there. Of course, that's not doing anything for your business if it's not even something that your audience member would get value out of seeing. And how does it actually set you apart from other people in your space that are doing the exact same thing? So, making sure we're aligned on the actual goals and what feels like it's not working well, and then making sure that we take that and translate it to who's your audience and is the content that you're putting out actually the correct, content pillars and the type of content that would matter to them and be relevant.
So I'm going to share a quick story because I think it's really helpful in this. I think this question happens a lot of, gosh, I'm doing all the things, I'm checking the boxes, but it's not working. Why isn't social media working? And the best thing I would say is ask somebody who has run social media for other businesses before. Because a lot of times what happens is business owners will ask who they think a social media expert is, but what they ask is like a college student or a person who's like really good at Instagram that has no idea how to use social media for a plumbing business to drive leads, but they know how to build Instagram engagement for lifestyle content. And those are just two totally different things. And so the best thing I could say, and I remember we had a client who did this where they had a college intern creating their content and they were getting all these engagements and likes, they were getting no business out of it. And it's because this dude was just creating on-trend content. Whatever the newest TikTok trend was, he was just doing that at the business. So it was doing something, but they were a SaaS. Like it wasn't doing anything to promote their SaaS business or connect with their potential SaaS customers. The goal here is not 2 million likes or to go viral. The goal is to connect with your customers in a meaningful way so that this can be a great channel for you long term to extract value from. So a lot of times there's this mismatch of just because you know social doesn't mean you understand social for business.
Absolutely. And it's very tempting. It's very tempting in the social space to just think, okay, I can put up this stuff that's trendy, but you really need to make it very apparent to your target audience what is the next step that they're supposed to take. And you can do an incredible job of creating viral videos. But to Natalie's point, if you don't give them a clear next step of how does this actually tie in to our businesses and services and give them a clear journey and a path forward, then it's not going to, it can look great on paper as far as the actual social results, but it's not ultimately getting your business what it needs.
The goal is business growth, not social media stardom.
For some people, it might be, but
We do both. We can have it all. All right. Before we log off, is there a burning piece of advice or an opportunity that they're missing out on, something that you can't sign out without telling them how to take advantage of their social media or an opportunity they might be overlooking?
So if I was thinking about like just burning advice for home services companies on social media, like I would say start with Facebook. Yeah, Instagram is great. There's probably a reason why your audience is on Instagram. TikTok is neat. There's probably a reason they're on TikTok. Like you could reason your way into a lot of stuff. Do a great job on Facebook. And then don't neglect Google Business Profile. A lot of people don't think of that as a traditional social media profile, but a lot of that content you create that you put on Facebook, you can also put on your Google Business Profile. And that listing is going to be very, very important for your business long term. It probably already is. And brands who can update that monthly, ideally even weekly, will see increased visibility. So I would say that Facebook, but then get some content on Google Business Profile, that can make a really big difference for you.
If I had any burning advice for home services companies, I would say a couple of things. Number one, prioritize trust building content over promotional content. I know it seems counterintuitive. I promise it is not for social media. And on the other side of that, thinking about visibility and exposure, adding on to Natalie's point about Google Business Profile, short form video. Do not be afraid of it. So many people now are searching more and more through YouTube, through Instagram Reels or Facebook Reels. Search behavior is going in the way of short form video. And that doesn't mean that you have to have perfectly polished videos of all your service offerings and all your promotional content. Just get more comfortable making video. Do it with questions that you're already answering, jobs and job sites that you're already going on, and just get more comfortable because it's just going to keep moving forward. And you're going to be in a much better position if you just start with that now and just start.
Just start.
Just start.
Thank you guys so much for sharing your ideas, expertise, the feedback. Anyone who's listened, if you feel like, well, this can't possibly apply to me, you can reach out at v9digital.com and we can do an audit for you. And we'll tell you how this would apply to you or not. We can give you some more specific ideas. But outside of that, thank you, Monica and Natalie.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us. I had a blast.
The pleasure's all mine. And I'll see you guys next time.
See you next time. That was me singing out as promised.
You did it.
Let's not talk about it anymore.